Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is the unevenness of parenthood, which again comes off the back of some discussions in our members-only group. So we really hope to just talk about our own experience of that and perhaps how we would flip that within our own lives. So before we do that, we'd love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe, where once a week, once a fortnight, we send you off an email with links to everything we've put out in the world, and you can click away and choose what you'd love to listen more to or perhaps didn't realise was out in the ether. So please join our tribe, nourishingthemother.com.au. We would love to have you.
Now, we've prepared a couple of notes here, and as I'm reading this podcast topic, I'm thinking, God, like there's so much I haven't even talked to you about that is also in this, which is...
Oh, great. I love a fresh story, Bridge.
Well, I'm thinking about the role of the father or the father figure and how much more we expect of that role than we ever have in before. And also, similarly, the role of the mother, since the dawn of feminism, mothers now want fulfillment. Mothers and women want more.
Beyond motherhood.
And so it requires, or is asking of us in this generation to... It's almost like a repositioning of roles and a re-navigating of identity within those roles. And that is what takes us, I think, to this place of maybe unwillingness to accept our perception of this unevenness in parenthood that perhaps our grandmothers' generations would have just accepted as their job and, as we know, often medicated through.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to frame a conversation like this with where it's sat historically and then where we are now around, the role of parenthood, and then juxtaposed with that or kind of overlaid with that is that raising children now is not just about keeping them alive, and it's not just about everyone has, the parents say what goes and children are to be seen and not heard, and some of those older concepts of raising children. We all are at a point in, I guess, the planetary evolution, I suppose, where there is a desire once basic needs are met, like survival and those kinds of things. We're looking for, I guess, awakening. We're looking for, vast opportunities and contribution at a much bigger level. We're looking for, more. And so we're looking for more for ourselves and looking for more for our children, which means that we're demanding more of what we bring to parenthood and what we ask of ourselves and what we ask of our partners who we're doing this with. So I guess I want to frame
I totally feel that. I'm glad
where
that
we
you
go
did that.
with that. And it only just occurred to me, I was looking at that and I'm thinking we have to set that up because that's where we are now.
Yeah. It's actually uncharted waters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a resettling of what's possible and therefore identity and roles that we love to create for ourselves so that we can all fit neatly into a box and know exactly, have certainty and security in exactly who we are and where we're going and what life is, and feel very safe.
Yes. In control, right?
Yeah. So it is a really interesting evolution that we find ourselves in now with parenthood, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I really think it is.
Yeah. And raising more conscious children as well. So as the earth evolves, so too do the humans. And so what was possible no longer is, and that requires change. And so we birth change makers.
Yes. Yeah, we do, right? And our children are, our children also, I think, call us to step up so much in how we parent them to enable them to be the change makers they're here to be, which is hard and awesome, but hard.
So let's start. I love that you've written notes and I haven't, because that's just golden. And I'm so excited to follow your flow.
Okay. So I guess the whole concept of unevenness of parenthood. So I think when we look at the concept of anything that we're deciding is uneven, it's almost like, well, in the mother's case, I do more and they don't do enough. That's the standard kind of, so I'm the one who cleans and makes sure that everybody's fed, and I'm planning the meals and I'm doing the washing, and I'm thinking about the, endless activities everybody's going to, and I'm managing the emotions. So I'm the psychologist as well. So I'm wearing all of these hats, and sometimes these hats feel overwhelming and you need to do more. Kind of gets us to the place of feeling like there's an unevenness.
I think it's actually, you're right, I think it's the overwhelm.
Yes.
As opposed to the doing of anything, it's the feeling of overwhelm that has you sitting in, this is uneven and unfair for me.
It's a mental load as much as it is, not feeling yourself in that role or not feeling like you've got enough space. It's just the endlessness of needing to keep on top of it all. And so what I'd written down here is that, it feels uneven when we're resenting all that we have to do and be and feel like someone should save us. So we've almost got to that point of like, can't do this anymore. It's not fair. Like, we end up in that place of, wanting a way out. And so we immediately kind of look upon the person who's doing this role with us to say, okay,
well, we look outside of us is the first step.
So whether that's, quite often it is within that intimate family, it's the partner, and you're looking to them and saying, well, how are you going to do more? Or it's looking beyond that to how to get family to do more, or sometimes, it's often, I think, the mother feeling like I would feel more in control if I had my kids in more days of daycare or more care, so I could go and work, and then I feel more in control. And I think that that's fairly common as well, and fairly well celebrated, like as women, because you can have that and this and be across everything. So that's part of it. And then I think that the someone should save us kind of expression is almost like that like, it's a bit of the victim story. It's a bit of this feels all too hard and you're not doing enough and you should do
and
this.
I don't have any more solutions or answers, so it needs to come from outside of me.
Yeah. Which is painful to be there, right? And I think when we get to that point of frustration, there's no mistake in that either, because that's calling us into more empowerment. But we get to the empowerment through feeling into the frustration and through feeling into what's not working for me right now. And through looking honestly at, our partner and what we're expecting of them and how they are or aren't showing up and how we're wanting them to be, and maybe often not communicating that to them, I would say.
We're making assumptions or, almost like setting the trap, aren't we, for them to pass or fail.
Yeah. Which is not a recipe for, a connected relationship, and I think it can reduce the relationship down to roles, and impersonalize the relationship and disconnect the relationship. Which I think every mother has found themselves in that place, and I think that we, just like we disconnect and reconnect to ourselves, we do that in the relationship too. And when we're not connected to our partner, what are we connected to? Like, we're so dynamic and flowing that's not necessarily wrong, but it is also calling us back into communication and back into connecting with ourselves and what we're needing, and also what we're projecting out. What are the stories that we're running that are leading us to here, particularly if we find ourselves here often, like that point of like, I can't do this shit anymore, like, or, just looking at, and I've certainly found this in my days, like, you look at the washing pile that just feels like I laugh. I call it Mount Washington, like it's a joke. But, the washing pile that needs to be done, and then the dishes, and then the floor that you can feel grittiness underfoot. And, it's just, you're almost like this deer in the headlights going, what do I do next? And that's the point at which you can build resentment, because it's almost like, I want someone else to fix this. I'm done.
Or I don't have any more capacity.
Yeah. I have no more capacity. I don't have it in me. And that's shitty, right? Like, it doesn't feel good. But I don't always know that there is the unevenness that we say there is, because sometimes we haven't always looked at how is our partner contributing that I'm not seeing, in ways that might be different to how I think contribution looks, maybe, or because because our values dictate our contribution to our family. You and I talk about this a lot. Like having a really high value on family can look infinitely different, in terms of this family compared to that.
It can look like working 60-hour weeks so that you have a wage that pays for your children's private school and every extracurricular they could possibly experience.
Or the holidays, or the big spacious house. Whereas for you, it might look like connection. It might look like listening. It might look like presence. And so you feel like you're contributing all of that, and you're really showing up. But it's uneven because you have an absent partner, or a partner who
isn't showing love in the same way.
Yeah. Because we all communicate our love through our highest values. And there's no parent that doesn't love their children. But sometimes it just looks different to how we think it should look. And when we see love as consciously parenting and really listening and respecting our children, and perhaps supporting their next level of growth, and we see our partners maybe, by their behaviour disregarding those things, then we can make that mean whatever we want to make that mean, without seeing actually that their contribution is equal, it's just different.
Another one that I'm just being reminded of is, for whatever reason, our partner is flat on the couch.
Yeah.
And the house is screaming at us, and the children are screaming at us, and we still keep going. I'd love to lie on the couch.
Yeah.
But I can't.
Yes. Because there's all this stuff that needs to get done.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I still feel triggered by that.
Well, I think this is the point though, right? I think ultimately we're all going to see bias in our world.
Yeah.
And the point is not that there is or isn't a bias. It's like a moot point. There's no point in even arguing it or spending any time there. Yeah, well, there is, and there isn't. We all see
a different reality.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So the point is more, what am I seeing? Why am I seeing it?
Yeah.
What are the beliefs that are there?
Yeah.
And what is calling for me to step up into and change? Because what I'm currently running and doing is no longer working for me.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the call of what's next, because there's a certain amount of a shell cracking and an identity splitting that has to be let go of in order for that, newborn person, woman, to emerge.
And it's interesting, I'd said here, how is you perceiving them in a certain way upholding the construct of your own identity?
Oh, man, I had to sit with that when you said it. I can still feel it in my body, because I get this rise of anxiety from my solar plexus, and then I feel like it pierces my heart, because that's me, right? Because I micromanage the shit out of everyone. And then at some point I'm like, well, if I don't do it, it just doesn't get done. And I was having this conversation with you, Bridget, because I tried to step back. I say I did, but I don't know, I'm questioning myself on even that as a belief. And shit went wrong. And I was like,
See?
You see? Do you see, Bridget? This is my life.
This is why I can't. This is why I have to do everything.
Yeah. And then when you said that, I was taken back to that moment and I thought, yeah, because I have a fantasy and an infatuation with my identity as capable. Because of my voids, right?
Yeah.
My childhood story. I know it comes from there, but I can still see that I am still, and maybe for the rest of my life, working through the shedding of that enormous void.
But it's such a massive void. I don't think you'll ever escape it.
Totally, right? Yeah. And there's so many layers. And the truth is, shit doesn't get done because I didn't do it. Well, on some level, yes, it's painful and I'm going through anxiety and anger and all of these horrendous emotions in the dealing with now the chaos. But on some level, I'm also being filled up by that. You see, you need me.
Yeah, but you also love the chaos because it gives you something else to micromanage.
That's so true.
Right?
That's so true. And I did micromanage it and then filled up my cup and I could pat myself on the back again and go, yes, look how capable I am. Look how much you can do.
I see a really good cycle happening here.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. I'm approaching it with humour, but the truth is there is a point at which that stings. Because there is a part of me that doesn't, I would rather flake out on the couch and be like, yo, dude, you do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But my voids won't actually let me get so off path
to do that.
And there's genius in that. And at the same time, I'm actually being fulfilled by that. But it is worth taking a pause to consider the very thing you say you hate is only presenting itself because it still works for you on some or many levels. And so to come back from resentment to appreciation for its presence, I think is a really humbling place to be. Because then you can see how the people like my husband, because he was involved in this whole situation, I was like, well, you're an idiot and this whole thing is fucked and, you know, blah, 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 blah. All of these things that would create disconnection and pain and separation between myself and my husband. I can humble myself enough to go, wow, you're actually providing perfectly for me to be able to feel my own sense of self-worth because of how it's coming through my values. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
So I'm no longer looking at him with unworthiness, but I'm looking at him going, wow.
You're actually giving me what I asked for.
Yeah. Just didn't come in the way that I asked for it because I was not conscious of it.
Yeah.
And we're always going to run into that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Just interrupting our podcast on the unevenness of parenthood to let you know we have our next live round of Loathing to Loving L2L program coming up at the end of April. If you would love to join us for 5 weeks of belief busting facilitation, then please check it out. We do have 12-month payment plans. So we would love to have you join us, nourishingthemother.com.au, and scroll down to L2L program to find out more. So I really loved that point when you said it because I thought, yes, on some level, the very thing we hate is still working for us. So the question is then to bring more awareness to it.
Yeah. And like, you know, an example, I mean, in line with what your, you know, running pattern is, it's like yours is, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. But it's deeper than that because it's also, you're doing it because of some underlying belief. So you then look at, if it doesn't get done, I will be, my house will be, my kids will be. And we get to the point at which we realize that it almost represents death for us on some level than to go against that pattern because it is often so representative of such a deep wound.
Yeah, but then I think with that deep wound, you can see how it's serving your values.
Yeah.
And I actually think about you in this too, because if you didn't parent consciously...
Show me the mirror.
No.
Because sometimes we can't always see our own stuff.
No, well, I think we rarely actually can. Yeah. But that's why it's good to be in circle because or in a group of women who are doing something because you see the mirror that you wouldn't see on your own. Anyway, I diverge. What I was thinking of then was if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. And I think about this not only only for you, but so many women in our tribe, is when I'm parenting consciously, but my partner isn't. If I wasn't there driving the conscious parenting, driving the conversations, driving the way that our children are treated, responded to, spoken to, given opportunities to, it wouldn't happen. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so if my children are spoken to horrendously, I kind of shoved in the corner somewhere, seen and not heard.
Sit in front of the TV all day.
Right, yeah,
You know,
all of these things.
Whatever
right?
we judge as like very unconscious.
Yeah. So if I don't bring the consciousness, what will happen? If I don't bring the consciousness, it means in my mind and in my body somewhere I will be. My kids will be. My life will be. My house will be. You know, and so you can see beautifully in there the core beliefs that are coming from your wounds from your childhood, but also out of those, the values that you are so geniusly motivating yourself to fulfill.
Yes. It's really profound, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you sit in that place and see the service of it.
And I do, though, think the unevenness of parenthood, I mean, to some extent, I think that's a reality based on if you are the stay-at-home parent.
Yes.
I don't think it matters, or the parent that's around more, does more pickups, does more drop-offs, you know, is home for the meal
Does
run.
more of what we might call mundane or something.
Just the basic getting everyone everywhere, meeting needs of survival.
Yeah.
If you are the parent who does the majority of that, and that can be a stay-at-home dad or a stay-at-home mum or, you know, whatever version of that it is, ultimately there's more of those responsibilities that fall on you. But as you were saying at the start, there's other life responsibilities that fall equally on the other person. But we can get so lost in our own tunnel when we're not feeling like we're lit up and fulfilled that that's the way we see it.
And I think it probably feels more crushing sometimes for the person who's more stay at home or more surrounded by the children, because with young children, you get very little spaciousness in your head.
Totally.
You know, like you're constantly being asked something or being asked to be enthusiastic about something, or just you know, you get very, very little emptiness, I suppose, you know, in your head.
Yeah.
And that feels relentless. And when that feels relentless, it's going to feel overwhelming. And overwhelming feels, you know, feeds that sense that we feel that there's an unevenness. Because the reality is, like,
we're missing out.
We're only judging the unevenness because it feels negatively uneven, right? We're not judging it if it feels the other way. So then I think it's about what are the things that I can do to delegate or outsource or build my sense of community in such a way that I can bring more joy to the things that I might otherwise feel are just taxing or relentless, like the washing, for example.
I actually come back to last week's podcast when you talked about building vision.
Yes. Yeah, so seeing meaning in, you know, and I've talked about that before, like, you know, a lot of what helped me through Sylvie's younger toddler years was seeing the meaning in, like, me washing the high chair down, or seeing the meaning in me cleaning, because I knew, like, at that developmental stage for her, from Montessori point of view, like, practical life, she's absorbing that, you know. And so actually me bringing more joy to that role can be inspiring and teaching for her, you know. So that helped me. Having that intellectual understanding of it was just a reframe for me to bring more joy.
I love that. That's
to
beautiful.
Like, you know, what we might just label as like the endlessness of.
Because Steiner see it the same way too.
Yeah, you know, of running a home. And I think sometimes because, you know, homemaking is not at all valued in our culture.
And in fact judged now.
Really judged, right? Because you can just get a cleaner for that shit.
Yeah.
So why would you do it yourself? You know? Or just, there's so many things you could be doing in the world instead of cleaning or instead of picking up after your children. But when we look at it from a very narrow, more masculine productivity point of view, we miss out on energetically what it can create. And I think energetically is where Steiner and Montessori sort of come at it from. And that is
which is ultimately spiritually or soulfully aligned for a lifetime.
Yes. Yeah. And particularly, you know, I think you know, we know like the first 3 years of a child's life kind of create all of the neural pathways and all of the patterns that they
all
essentially.
All of the voids.
All the voids, yes, which Julie's so wonderfully still meeting. And we all are, but we're using your example because you gave it so beautifully.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we can have reverence then for changing the nappy, for, you know, for the stuff that just feels, and I think like Janet Lansbury and Magda Gerber also talk about that too, like bring enormous presence to that. Like that caregiving is like, how we respond to our children is how they learn to respond to themselves. Like, wouldn't we love to respond to ourselves in a gentler and more compassionate way? And like that can even bring...
And it changes the definition of presence even, I think, when you can consider the jobs that you've got to do in a day, like changing a nappy, getting someone dressed, can actually be a form of play. So as opposed to feeling like you have to drag your ass to playing tea parties or something, is considering that every one of these moments is an act of presence and that the stacking of those is what creates the feeling of presence. Not necessarily whether you sat down and played tea parties that day or not.
It was what you brought to that. Because it can be so different depending on where we're sitting at it, where we're sitting with it.
The other part that I did want to touch on here was the unevenness of parenthood is the newborn baby phase. Because I do think that legitimately...
That's very uneven. I'm about to enter it again.
In the physicalness of it. But... this is when you get really good at realizing there is an unevenness present. And this may ebb and flow also over the course of life. And if you have a child that's sick, or if you yourself are sick, or you're facing illnesses of different, it's not going to be so clear cut as this is your role, this is my role, this is how we do life. You are always going to be in a cycling of flow and motion. Remember last week of the multifacet, right, and the dynamics that are at play. So the point is more to get really good at being able to stay present in your body enough through your psychology that you can find your voice to continue the communication cycle. Because the feeling of aliveness, the feeling of eroticism, which is just that life energy pumping through your body, is not how it looks and the definition of this is mine, this is yours, this is how we do this. It's the willingness to be present to the flow that is always present and communicate through that. It's the willingness to feel, to be open, to communicate in any given moment. Not this, we're done.
Tick, you know.
So I still think even we're thinking about the newborn phase, and I know I'm coming up to it, this is me previously, and I'm going, I know I'm going to be 24/7 caring. There'll be periods of time where I'm flat out with a baby on my chest. So what communication does that call me into? Well, it calls me into, I know I'm going to have to step back from cleaning, cooking, getting kids to and from school, I don't know, whatever the case may be. So how can I start to implement the outsourcing of those now and the conversations around how the change will happen so that I don't need to wait for someone to guess it?
Or wait for myself to like flip my lid and, get into resentment.
Exactly. So realizing that even though you are providing more in this phase right now, you will be providing less in other areas. So there's still an evenness to the unevenness. Right? There's still a counterbalancing of challenge and support. And we will meet that whether we do it consciously or we do it unconsciously. The only difference I see is how much connection and life joy we bring to that. So, and I also say to any parent I have ever had is forget, to grandparents, forget looking after the baby, look after the mother. And let her do the job of look after the baby. It's not the other way around.
No, it's not. It's not you come over and hold the baby while the mother like makes tea for you and like prepares something or uses it to put a load of washing on. You put a load of washing on.
I actually think this is the biggest, I don't know what it is, but I feel so pained when I consider how invested we are in mother's body, psychology, well-being during pregnancy, because it'll all impact the baby. And then the minute the baby's out of you, it's like, hey, you're good.
See ya.
Off you go. And then that's when this person outside of you becomes intense and develops a personality, and you are having to look after a body and regulate a body outside of your own. And we are left
which you can only do based on how well you're able to regulate your own.
Right.
Which comes from asking how to get some of those additional needs met.
So I would also say to you that when you're feeling the unevenness, it's just because there's something missing in that key communication, which comes from the presence of listening deeply to your own needs, desires, and feelings, and then creating the voice to facilitate that outwards.
Yeah.
Not considering what effect it's going to have, who I'm going to piss off, what they might say, what they're probably going to do, so I won't bother anyway.
Yeah.
It's actually getting beyond your story enough to be willing to see further than that, and coming from it from a place not of resentment and, well, you should because I can't, but from a place of, I can totally see that this is how we're functioning, but I really right now, like me last week, right now I need more of me. How can we do that together so I can bring more?
Yeah.
So,
and it is planning, right? Because I guess it's like we get to the point of feeling really uneven when we haven't looked ahead at what we're going to be facing and what the challenges might be and how can we meet those, so that we've, as you say, like, yes, you're going to be feeding constantly. So who's going to do all the other things?
Right.
And not just leave that up to chance, but figure that out.
Yeah, no, exactly. Actually have a plan for it.
Yeah.
Or several, plan A, B, and C. And when it doesn't work, also being able to have a voice that moves with that and a body that cries that out and has a cycle that lets you feel all of that rather than trying to, rubber stopper that cycle from coming out, because if it comes out, it's too big or too much or what does it mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I really feel the unevenness of parenthood. I get where this beautiful listener and so many are at. I get it. I think we all flow in and out of unevenness. Unevenness of needing to be the breadwinner, unevenness of being the caregiver, unevenness of breastfeeding and settling.
Yeah.
But we also always have a choice to change it.
And I think sometimes, getting to that place, it requires us to be incredibly honest with ourselves, honest with ourselves about our changing values, honest with ourselves about our transforming identity, honest with ourselves about the fact that maybe what once inspired us no longer does.
And the beliefs that hold us back.
Yeah.
Like I think about this even in terms of a baby. Well, I have to be there because no one else can put the baby to sleep. I have to be there because it's my body, my breasts, my smell that gets her to sleep.
Or I have to be there because all of the research says this, whether if you've intellectualized it and said, if I'm not there, then they're going to have this, which is going to mean that for their life, all of that kind of stuff. And so we subscribe to that to keep us in a role, even though we might be actually building a slow resentment toward that because it's no longer fitting for us anymore. But that requires a busting open of identity.
And belief. And considering, coming back to the start of the podcast, the meaning. I will be, they will be, the house will be.
Yeah.
And really feeling into the voids that are fueling you to motivate you in what feels like a negative way at the moment, but is actually still trying to be on the path to fulfilling what you're here to do.
Yeah.
But we often just can't read it that way. So if you would love some help to read what's going on for you, we'd love you to join us for Loathing to Loving at the end of April. We have a 5-week round, and you can find out more on nourishingthemother.com.au and click L2L program.
We'd love you to join us. And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com and Newbridge.
suburbansandcastles.com. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey. And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.